Good afternoon and welcome to Legacy After the Locker Room. I'm your host, Kayla Bradham. And folks, get your tissues ready because we have a guest who's going to inspire you and encourage you with amazing stories. Welcome to our show, 25-year Major League Baseball coach, one of the best racquetball players in America, dad to 8, Rich Donnelly. Rich, welcome to Legacy After the Locker Room.
Kayla, honored to be on your show.
Thank you so much. So, Rich, I want to start by talking baseball. If you don't mind, little boy obviously loved the game. How did you get your start?
Well, when you say little boy who loved the game, that could be an understatement. Uh, I was born into the baseball. My brother played professional baseball, and he's the one that got me into liking it and everything. He was 14 years older than I was, and he played professional baseball for it's the Oakland Athletics, used to be Kansas City Athletics, and he was my hero. He was my model, and unfortunately, at 28 years old, he contacted Hodgkin's disease and passed away. So he was my idol, and before he passed away, he would tell me all the things that I needed to do to be in professional ball. And my dream was always, of course, to play or be in the big leagues. My mom always used to say, "You're a dreamer, Rich. You're a dreamer." And now after 74 years, I agree with her. I was a dreamer, and it's okay to dream. And when I say dream, I wasn't normal. My mom says, "You're not normal. You're too active." What I used to do when I was little, Kayla, and the fans are like this. When I was 3, 4, 5 years old, there wasn't no preschool. It was stay home with mom. And when she would take a nap, I would get mad she wouldn't play with me. So I'd go to her cupboard and I'd get all the powdered jello boxes and I'd open them, dump them on our linoleum floor and slide. Why? Because it had dust. And that was just like baseball. So I started very early, and cripe at 5 years old, I was running around my hometown of Steubenville, Ohio, loose. And I was hanging out with guys in high school and college when I was 5. So naturally, I had to be in baseball.
Oh my goodness. Your poor mom. That's all I can think. Mopping up jello off the linoleum floor. Rich, do me a favor. You've coached for a lot of teams. You got your start with the Twins, right? Tell us some of the organizations you've been involved with.
Well, in my career, real quick, I was drafted actually by the Yankees when I was in college at Xavier University, uh, and unfortunately, the guy who drafted me, he died the next day. So I never signed with the Yankees. And you're right, I signed originally with the Twins. Then I was drafted by the Washington Senators, which became the Texas Rangers. I played 4 years in minor leagues, two in Class A, two in Triple A. I went to spring training with the Washington Senators big team. My manager was Ted Williams, the greatest hitter of all time. Then Ted Williams thought I'd be a good manager because one day I talked back to him and he liked that. So he told the people, make me a manager. So I managed for 10 years in the minor leagues for the Rangers. And then I got promoted to be a big league coach. So I coached with the Texas Rangers. And then I coached with my hometown team under Jim Leyland, the Pittsburgh Pirates, for 10 years. And then after that, we went to Florida for the Marlins, where we won the World Championship. Then after that, I went to Colorado for 3 years. Then I went to Milwaukee for 3 years. And then I went back to the Pirates. I see you. And then I went to the Seattle Mariners. And then I finished up running spring training for the New York Mets at their big league camp. So all told, 52 years. I think over 30 in the big leagues and 14 managing in the minor leagues.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Do you have a favorite team?
Oh, the Buccos, my hometown team. Yeah, I tell you, it's funny. When I coached with the Pirates, it was like magical. It was like I was a little kid, and I was going to the ballpark, and then I was coming home at night, and all my heroes when I was little, Roberto Clemente, Bill Mazeroski, Steve Blass, all of a sudden, I'm there with them. I'm there with them. I couldn't believe it. It was unreal. And people don't know what kind of Pirate fan I was in high school. My dad didn't allow me to date girls, so I locked myself in my room and I kept a box score of every Pirate game. And if they lost, my mom said I wouldn't come out of the room until the next game. I was so upset. And one time they took me to a game in Pittsburgh when I was little. The Pirates lost, and on the way back, they stopped for ice cream. And I sat in the back seat with my arms folded. I said, I don't want no stinking ice cream. We lost, and those guys don't care that they lost. I do. And my mom, she says, I'll get you a milkshake. I'll get you anything you want. No, I don't want nothing. Pirates lost, miserable. So that's the way I grew up.
Well, I just got to tell you, it resonates with me. I know you're a Badger fan. I was out for the Rose Bowl, and when we lost to Oregon, I wanted nothing to do with the world. Just forget it. My team lost.
Well, when I was small, it was my whole life. When the Pirates lost, I didn't go out of the house for 3 days. And I remember in high school, a girl, she says, would you like to go to the dance? And I said, are you nuts? The Pirates lost last night. How can you go to a dance when the Buccos lost? And the only other place, Kayla, I'll tell you this real quick. When I was small, I was a tremendous stutterer. I stuttered terrible. But the two places I found out I didn't stutter, it was like magic, which later on affected me in my life. On the baseball field, I didn't stutter. When I served Mass on the altar, I didn't stutter one bit. So those two places were the most comfortable places of my childhood. And later on, had a very big effect on how my life has been.
And we're going to talk about that in just a moment. Before we do, I want to remind our listeners, this is the Legacy After the Locker Room. We're powered by the Sports Philanthropy Network. Want to take a minute to shout out our sponsor of the week, DRG Talent Advisory Group, helping nonprofits with leadership. You can find them at www.drgsearch.com. Rich, you talk a lot about how the game affected you, and I appreciate that. And not a lot of interest in girls, but somewhere along the way, you met your lovely wife, Bert.
Yeah, I met her actually with Jim Leyland. We were, I was married to my first wife, Peggy, wonderful girl. We had 4 children, got divorced, and now I got a job in Pittsburgh. I come to Pittsburgh, and I was looking for actually something to get me back in the baseline. I was out of the baseline in my life. And by a quirk, I met my wife, Roberta, who got me back in the baseline. And it just so happened in my life, I asked for somebody who was very strong religiously. Well, she's a Bible translator. And you couldn't have written this up. You could not have written this up. And she's the most loving, caring person. And she's never told me one time, well, you ought to do this, you ought to do that. All she does is do it. And by example, I hope I've learned how to be a good human being, a good Christian, a good father, good husband.
Speaking of a father, being a good father, you have as many children as I do. And I'm competitive. And not many people can tie me. Between the two of us,
we got 16. Yeah, that's beautiful. Nothing better. Yeah.
So, Rich, I guess the question is, how do you put in such long hours away from home and be a good dad?
Well, I wasn't a good dad in the first part of my life, and in my book I admit it, and that's part of the deal. If you have a problem, the first thing is admitting it, and then what do? You try to fix it. Well, I've tried to do that, and I wasn't what you call I wasn't a good father for my kids, my first 4 kids. Now, when I met Roberta, she had 4 kids. Now we have 8, and by her example, by my daughter's example, Amy, who passed away, by my son's example, Mike, who passed away, saving a girl's life, by my other 2 daughters, I've learned more from them than I could ever learn from anybody else. And the great announcer, Ernie Johnson, after he works for TNT, after he's on a basketball all the time, and he called me after my son Mike died. And he says, Rich, how do you do it? And I'm going, wait a minute, Ernie. You have a child that's been in a wheelchair since he's been 6 years old and he's now 30. You take care of him every day. How do you do it? And then he just told me something I've never forgotten. He says, Rich, all I can tell you is trust God, period. And that's an awful, awful good advice. And like I say, I've been so fortunate. You don't get through this life without help. I don't care who you are. And everybody has problems. Everybody, and I like to say, I compare life to running the bases. When you're young, you go to first base. That's easy. Well, when I got to second base in my life, I was way out of the baseline. I needed something to grab me by the shoulders, shake me, and say, "What the heck are you doing?" And that person was my daughter Amy and my wife Roberta, who became what I do for a living, third base coaches. And in baseball, the ultimate goal is to start at home and get back to home. The ultimate goal in life, you start, you're born, and where do you try to end up? Back at home. It's just it's running the bases. And like I say, I had to be yanked back into baseline. I was so far out of the baseline. And I've tried to help other people who are out of the baseline to get back into baseline, I can say in baseball terms, and get back to where they were most happy, to where they could wake up in the morning and go, hey, oh, it's a wonderful day. Now can I do something good? Instead of, how many lies could I tell today? How many people could I deceive today? So all that together, personally, it's really helped me, and I just try to pass it on.
And I want to take a moment, Rich, to cover 3 stories that have inspired you to write the book, The Chicken Runs at Midnight. We'll talk about that and how people can get their hands on it. You've also created a keynote motivational speech, travel all over, giving that presentation. And it comes from 3 stories: your daughter, Amy, your son, and your 2 daughters. Would you start with Amy's story, please?
Yes, it was 1992, Kayla, and I'm in spring training with the Pirates. We had a really good team the last 3 years. Jim Leyland, the best manager ever. And it's just so much fun. It's too good to be true. Everything was wonderful. We were winning with your hometown team. I'm sitting on the floor at spring training watching a basketball game, and the phone rings, and it's my daughter, Amy. Hey, Dad, how you doing? Oh, Amy, how you going? And she's back in Arlington, Texas. And she says, Dad, I have something I have to tell you, and I'm sorry. And when she said that, I wasn't sure how to take it. She says, Dad, I'm sorry, but I have a brain tumor. And the reason why she said that is because she knew how much it would bother me. I thought I had a beautiful daughter in the prime of her life, now brain tumor. 5 days later, flew to Arlington, or I flew to Dallas. She had the operation. And when the operation was over, the doctor walked in and told her, Mom and I said, don't beat around the bush. Tell me straight up. He says, Rich, she has 9 months to live. We can't get the tumor out. And for a second, and like I say, I was out of the baseline then. I was mad at God. I was mad. How can you do this to my daughter? Why don't you do it to me? And she, I saw Amy a day later. She says, Dad, go back to Pittsburgh. You get in the World Series, and I'll be fine. That's the attitude she had. And she's the one that just had the brain operation. Well, I go back to Pittsburgh. The season goes on. We get in the playoffs. And Jim Leyland and I, we fly her up for a playoff game with her friend Cindy. And after the 5th game of the playoffs, Kayla, she's in the back seat driving back to the hotel because she has to fly back the next day. She says, Dad, when you get down in that stance, in that crouch with the man on second base, what are you telling those guys? The chicken runs at midnight or what? And we all just laugh like, what the heck is that? Yeah. All the kids are in a car. So that was our family motto. We didn't know what it meant. It's just something Amy said. Well, during the playoffs, we end up losing, didn't go to the World Series. And in the following January, 93, she lapsed into a coma and died January 28th, 93. And we thought to honor her by putting that phrase on her tombstone, "The chicken runs at midnight," which nobody in any cemetery in the world has that on their tombstone. But it meant so much to her and so much to us why we put it on there. Now, 4 years later, Jim Leyland gets the Miami Marlin job. I go down there. Sure enough, we get in the playoffs. And halfway through the season, we acquired another Milwaukee connection now, Craig Counsell, who's now the manager of the Brewers. And Craig, we acquired him halfway through the season. Well, Counts had a way of holding his bat real high and flapping his arms like a chicken. So my two sons, Amy's brothers, Tim and Mike, they nicknamed him the Chicken all summer. I didn't even know about it. They'd go, "Hey, the Chicken wants to take some batting practice." I said, "Who?" They said, "Counsell, the Chicken." I said, "Okay, whatever." Now we get into World Series. 7th game, 68,000 people. You can't even breathe. Something you fantasize since you were 5 years old. Craig Counsell was on third base. 68,000 people. Millions around the world watching. You are in the World Series. It doesn't even hit you. And Edgar Renteria gets a base hit. Craig Counsell scores the winning run. Just pandemonium. Everybody's jumping on one another. Oh, like you see it on TV now. And I'm trying to find my sons, Tim and Mike. And I see Mike. He's jumping on a pal over here. And I'm trying to find Tim. And all of a sudden, I see Tim and he's running at me screaming, crying. And I said, "What's wrong with you? Why are you crying? What's wrong? We just won." He said, Dad, look at the clock." I said, "What clock?" He said, "Dad, the stadium clock behind you. It was 12:02 midnight." He says, "Dad, Craig Counsell, the Chicken, ran at midnight." I felt like the first thing I thought of, Kayla, this is crazy. I thought of St. Paul in the Bible when he was struck off his horse. He needed to be knocked off his horse. I needed to be knocked off my horse. I went to my knees. It was like an out-of-body experience. Craig Counsell, the Chicken, scored at midnight. Something she had said that made no sense came to pass for me. And she wanted that more than anything else. So when that happened, it just turned me inside out. I said, "Well, Amy, you got me again. Just when I least expected." So I made a vow that from that point on, I would go tell her story. I would tell about her in her last 9 months, that she didn't care about all she cared about was everybody else. She didn't care about herself. She was going to die. She was 17. And if you look at all the pictures, Kayla, after she got the tumor, her smile was better than it was before. She had a crooked smile like I do. But when in those last 9 months, she accepted it. She knew it. And she wanted to make sure me and everybody else was going to be okay. So that's what I've been trying to do. And then 2 years ago, my son Michael was driving home in Texas at midnight. Of course, it was midnight. And he saw a girl and her boyfriend, trying to push a car across the road that was stuck. Mike got out, tried to help her. He started to push the car. All of a sudden, he heard a screech of tire. Car came around the bend. The highway patrol told me at over 65 miles an hour. Michael grabbed the girl by the collar, threw out of the way. He was hit and killed instantly. Saved the girl's life, giving his own life. That's the ultimate sacrifice you could give, the ultimate. A year later, my two daughters, Leanne and Tiffany, were at the Las Vegas concert. They always meet once a year in Vegas. They were standing there. They didn't know what happened. All of a sudden, they heard popping going off. They thought it was from the stage. They looked at the girl in front of them, named Natalie Grummett, now we know was shot in the face. The bullet went right between my daughters' heads. And my two daughters, instead of running like I would have, they laid down on top of the girl, covered her, took their blouse off and made a tourniquet around her face, stopped the bleeding, and saved her life. I have 8 children. They're all remarkable. And you're supposed to be the hero to them, not in our family. They turned the tables on me. I needed something to shake me up, just like Paul did, or Saul became Paul. I needed somebody to shake me. And then I met my wife, Roberta, and like I told you before, I needed somebody who could shake me up, grab me. What are you doing? You could do so much good, Rich. What are you doing? My wife, Roberta, is a Bible translator. She leads by example. She's never told me how to be, how to act, not one time in 31 years of marriage. But she shows me every day by her compassionate, by her caring, and everything else. And that's why I say I've been blessed. I've been blessed to have people like that to get me back in the baseline. And as I talk around the country, Kayla, I find out there's millions of people who are looking for somebody to get them back in the baseline. So basically, that's my story about. and I've been so blessed. I said, don't feel sorry for me. The compassion and all the people calling me has made me a much better person, I hope.
I'm speechless. That doesn't happen very often, but I'm fighting back tears. And I knew the story. I knew all 3 of those stories. And to hear it's so inspiring that you could be bitter, you could be angry, you could be full of hate, and you're not. And that's so beautiful.
I'm going to add something here. I was brought up a real strict Catholic. I was an altar boy. I was a server. I had 16 years of Catholic education. I was in church every day, went to mass every day, served every day, almost became a priest, but found out they didn't have baseball at the seminary. That's why I didn't go. So, but, and after I said, I was such a strict Catholic. I thought that if you walked by a church and didn't go in and visit, that was a sin, because that's why the church was there. So I used to walk by churches and go in by myself, and I'd be with my buddies. They said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Hey, I'm going in for 5 minutes for a visit. I'll be back." And they said, "You're a freak." And through my life, they tell me I'm a freak in racquetball. I'm a freak in my life. They said, "You do stuff no one else does. You're like." My wife used to call me the mole man because I like to stay in the house. I don't like to go out. But all that, I think it's all shaped my life, hopefully in the second half of my life, to be a better person.
And you're so committed to that when I asked, the best way for people to follow you, should they look for you on Instagram or Twitter, you said, "You know what, Kayla? If my story inspires somebody, I want to connect with them." And you put your phone number as the best way to connect. And I'm going to share that with anybody who's listening to the podcast and not watching the live stream. To connect with Rich, if his story inspires you, or if you have a group that you'd like to bring him in to share his story, you can reach out to him directly at 740-317-6327. Again, that's 740-317-6327 to connect with Rich directly. I think that's amazing. It's definitely not something that we're used to. So thank you, because I'm sure this story is going to touch and inspire a lot of folks, Rich.
I'm a freak.
Yeah, I guess so.
When I was little, my mom said, I always used to tell my mom, I want to be different than everybody else. And in a strange way, my wife will vouch for that. She says, when you die, we're going to open up that head and see what's in there, because something's in there that's not in everybody else's head.
I think this is something that's so interesting. You got your actual start with Minnesota. There has only been one other person in all of the shows that Legacy After the Locker Room has produced where the guest has given out his phone number as a way to connect. And interestingly enough, former Minnesota Twins pitcher Daryl Jackson,
Unbelievable.
as he shared his story of overcoming alcohol and drug addiction and cleaning up his life and really getting into the hearts of his community, working with the youth. So
I've had the good fortune the last 2 years of coaching Tim Tebow, and
oh my gosh.
and being and learning so much from him. People ask me, is he real? Is he like that? Or is that all put on? I go, no, he's better than that. He's better than real. And he has inspired me. He has inspired me being with him for a couple years in spring training. And we talk all the time. And that's what I mean. It's like the Lord, I don't know how he does this, Kayla. He put my wife in my life. He put a guy like Tebow in my life. He put a connection with you in my life where I have the avenue to come on here and talk. And just unbelievable people I have met that I would have never met before if it wasn't for baseball or anything else.
Well, it's true. The Lord gives and the Lord takes away, and all of it's good. Rich, I just want to shout out again that book, The Chicken Runs at Midnight. If people want to get their hands on that, they can purchase it on Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon.com. I don't know what the price is, but it's real cheap. It's been out for 2 years. It's been in the top 10 of baseball coaching books. And Tom Friend, the author, it's a funny book. You will laugh like silly. You all the way back to, I'll tell you one quick story. My hometown's a gambling town. It's the hometown of Dean Martin and Jimmy the Greek, the gambler. So in kindergarten, I was playing a parlay in school. I was 7. The nun sister Eusebius came by and say, Rich, what's this? I said, oh, sister, it's a parlay. What's that? Well, sister, you take 3 teams, you take $5, and give it to my dad, and he'll bet it for you. And if 3 teams win, you win $25. She reached into her habit, pulled out a $5 bill, and played a 3-team parlay. She hit it for $25.
Oh my gosh!
Only in Steubenville, Ohio, could this happen. So, a lot of crazy stuff. But things like that are in the book. All the stories about Ted Williams, all the stories about Billy Martin, Jim Leyland, and in my hometown, everybody grows up wanting to be as cool as Dean Martin was, but never could be.
So speaking of being cool, I think you're at the top. If you had 30 seconds of advice for our listeners, what would your words of wisdom be?
I'm 74 years old. I've been blessed in a lot of ways, but the way I think I feel most blessed, if I can affect the life of another person in a positive way, and all of us have things we could do to affect others. Don't sit in a chair. Go out, talk to people, help people. A lot of people need help. Every person in this world, you don't come in or out unscathed. Something is in your life, a problem. Help the people fix the problem. Help somebody. Say hi to somebody who never gets a hi all day. Walk up to somebody, tell them you appreciate them. Up. Things like that. And it just makes the whole day better. And it makes, hey, you're only here on Earth. Like I told somebody, I'm 74, the average age is 80. Let's see, I got about 1,800 days left. I got a lot of work to do. And some of our young people like you got many more days. And our young people, you got 15,000 days. Use them. Don't waste those days. And like Tim Tebow, affect the life of another person. That's the best thing in the world. It's worth $1 million. It's more than $1 million. And all the friends that I've made, and I've run into a lot of people in my business who make a lot of money. But the best thing is to affect the life of another person in a positive way. And don't be selfish. I remember I read a book when I was little, I Am Third. You read it. I know, I can see your face. You're third, your fellow man is second, and of course, God is first. Live by that motto.
I love it. And speaking of helping people and making the world a better place, we're just out of time, but I ask every guest on Legacy After the Locker Room to partner with me on behalf of Sports Philanthropy Network to make an autograph donation to Special Olympics. Can we count on you for your support, Rich?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. We are just about out of time. I'll give you a second to shout out anybody that you need to shout out and give thanks to. And then we'll remind our listeners about the chicken runs at midnight.
Okay, Kayla, thank you. And again, all your listeners, thank you so much. Do something good for somebody today.
Wow, that's the best piece of advice. Do something good for somebody else today. Folks, if you're interested in the Chicken Runs at Midnight, you can get that on Amazon. Also, check out the Chicken Runs at midnight.org. To connect with Rich, 740-317-6327. Again, 740-317-6327. My name is Kayla Brett. I'm your host of Legacy After the Locker Room, here with 25 plus year. We won't even say the total number of years Rich Donnelly spent in Major League Baseball. But Rich and I here to remind you to live your legacy. Thanks, Rich.
Kayla, thank you. It's been great.